I never thought I'd live to see the day my own son would stand over me with a belt in his hand, his chest heaving, his face red with rage, and his eyes. God, his eyes, burning with a kind of greed I didn't even know was humanly possible. I remember lying there on the floor, half curled, half frozen, trying to understand how the boy I raised, the little child who once held my hand and cried when he scraped his knee, had turned into someone capable of towering over me and demanding that I sign everything away to him, as if I was nothing more than an obstacle keeping him from what he wanted. And maybe the real question that keeps swimming in my mind is this: was I wrong for everything I did leading up to this moment? Was I blind? Or was he always like this, and I simply refused to see it? Tell me, if you were in my position, what would you have done when your own child threatened you, not out of fear, not out of desperation, but out of pure hunger for your property, your home, your savings, your entire life's work? But let me take you back, because a moment like this doesn't appear out of nowhere. Stories like mine don't explode. They simmer, they brew, they crack silently under the surface until finally the earthquake hits. My name doesn't matter, not really, because this story is about a role bigger than any name: a mother. A mother who tried, who stumbled, who sacrificed, who hoped. My son's name is Daniel, and before you jump to conclusions, no, he wasn't always like this. Or maybe he was. Maybe kids show you who they are from the very beginning, and parents just sugarcoat it with what they want them to be. Daniel was my only child. His father left when he was 6, and from then on it was just the two of us. I worked 2 jobs for years just to make sure he had food, school fees, clothes that didn't embarrass him. I never let him feel the absence of a father, or at least I tried not to. Looking back now, maybe the problem was that I gave too much, and he grew up thinking everything should be handed to him the moment he opened his mouth. When Daniel was little, he had this innocent charm about him. He would run into my arms whenever I came home from work, his hair messy, his cheeks flushed, his smile wide enough to melt the coldest person alive. He was attentive, affectionate, and even a little clingy. Whenever I sat down, he'd plop himself beside me, asking what I was doing, who I talked to at work, what I ate for lunch. He'd always ask if I was tired, and then he'd hug me so tight I'd feel like my ribs were bending. Those moments made the long shifts worth it. They made the exhaustion disappear, but something shifted when he hit his teenage years. Maybe it was normal teenage rebellion at first. Late nights, bad grades, eye rolls that could cut glass. But then it slowly twisted into something else. He became obsessed with money. Not earning it, having it, demanding it. He envied kids who came from wealthier families and talked endlessly about what they had, where they traveled, what gadgets they owned. He began resenting me for not giving him an easy life. He'd say things like, "If Dad hadn't left, we wouldn't be so pathetic," as if my working myself into the ground meant nothing. But even then I tried. I tried conversations. I tried boundaries. I tried giving him what I could, even when it meant sacrificing things I needed for myself. I thought it would pass. I thought every storm in a child eventually calms. I didn't realize this storm was building into a hurricane. By the time Daniel turned 21, he was drifting aimlessly, job hopping every few months, quitting whenever someone told him what to do. He didn't want responsibility, but he wanted reward. He didn't want effort, but he wanted luxury. He started making comments about the house, the car, my savings, asking what would happen to them someday. I brushed it off, jokingly saying, "You'll get it all when I die, Daniel. Don't worry." I didn't realize he wasn't joking. Everything came to a boiling point when I inherited a piece of land from my father. It wasn't massive, but it was valuable enough that real estate agents began calling me. Valuable enough to attract the wrong kind of eyes, and most dangerously, valuable enough to ignite a greed in Daniel I had never seen before. He demanded I put it in his name, not asked. Demanded. He told me I owed him. That I wouldn't even have anything if he hadn't motivated me to work. That he deserved the land because young people like him can do more with it. I refused. Firmly. For the first time in a long while, I didn't cave to him, and that marked the beginning of the war. He stopped talking to me. Completely. Stopped eating with me. Stopped acknowledging me. Stopped even looking in my direction when we passed in the hallway. When I tried to ask him what was wrong, he would mutter, "You know what?" and shut his door. I should have forced him out then, but a mother's guilt is a powerful prison. I kept thinking he'd get over it, that we'd talk someday, that he was just angry. But then things escalated. One night, he came home drunk, slamming doors, shouting nonsense, kicking chairs, calling me selfish, useless, greedy. I locked myself in my room, trembling. because something about the way he moved and shouted felt like he wasn't fully in control. The next morning he acted like nothing happened. And then came the day everything snapped. I had just come home from grocery shopping when he confronted me in the hallway. He stood in the center like he was some kind of guard blocking entry. He held a folder in his hand. "You need to sign these," he said flatly. I asked him what they were, and he said they were ownership transfer documents for the house. From whose? The house I had worked my entire life to pay for. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking again, but his face didn't move, not a twitch. I told him no, before he even finished speaking. And that's when I saw something dark flicker across his face, like a shadow slipping over his eyes. He followed me into the living room. I told him to leave. He refused. He walked closer. I took a step back. And then, before I could understand what was happening, he grabbed his belt, ripped it off with one swift, violent motion, and pointed it at me as if it were some kind of weapon. I said, "Second IT." He growled. I stumbled backward. My heart slammed against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't my son. This wasn't the boy I raised. This wasn't even a human being in that moment. He looked possessed. And that is how I ended up on the floor, staring up at him while he towered over me with that belt hanging from his hand, his knuckles white, his eyes burning with desperation and greed. He screamed that I was wasting his future, that I was ruining his life, that he deserved everything I had built. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you even further back, because this story didn't just happen in a single moment. It was built brick by brick over years of choices, mistakes, love, and ignorance. Maybe that's what hurts the most. The knowledge that I contributed to this, even unintentionally. Growing up, Daniel wasn't deprived, but we definitely weren't wealthy. I tried to hide the struggle from him as much as possible. I used to skip meals to make sure he ate, patched up old clothes to make them look new, worked overtime even when my body screamed for rest. But kids are more observant than we give them credit for. He saw things. He noticed. And instead of learning gratitude, he internalized resentment. I think he hated the idea that other people had more than him. He hated that his father wasn't around to provide. He hated that I couldn't buy him brand name shoes or fancy phones. One incident that always stands out in my memory is when he was 13. His classmate invited him to a birthday party at a fancy restaurant. Daniel desperately wanted to wear a pair of sneakers he had seen in the mall. Ones I simply couldn't afford. I promised I'd try, but when the time came, I didn't have enough money. He cried, not in sadness but in rage. He smashed a glass, called me a failure, and locked himself in his room. That was the first time he made me feel like I wasn't enough. I tried to brush it off as teenage emotion, but looking back now, that was the first spark of the fire that eventually consumed him. When he finished high school, he didn't want to pursue further education. He said he wanted fast money. He bounced around different groups of friends, some of whom were deep into rich, quick fantasies and sketchy business schemes. He got obsessed with the idea of becoming wealthy without effort. He watched videos about manifesting wealth, law of attraction money hacks, financial domination, all these things that promised luxury without labor. I begged him to find a stable path, but he always said I didn't believe in his potential. Fast forward to just a few months before the belt incident. I had told Daniel I planned to use the inherited land to build a small rental property, something that would help me earn passive income as I grew older, something that would secure my retirement, something that would keep me independent. He laughed in my face. He said I was too old to be starting new projects, that I should let the younger generation handle real investment opportunities. He proposed that we build a business on the land. Except by we, he meant him. He would run it. He would control it. He would benefit from it. When I refused, he stopped coming home some nights. He'd stay out drinking. He'd borrow money. He'd come home agitated, pacing, muttering to himself about opportunities slipping away. He fell in with a group of friends who talked constantly about real estate flipping and don't miss the train of generational wealth. I think they pumped him full of the idea that he deserved a shortcut. And then, that day, when he stood over me with the belt, it felt like all those years of entitlement manifested right in front of me in flesh and bone. But before I continue to the next moment in that terrifying scene, let me pause and talk directly to you, because I need to know something deeply and honestly. So that's the situation I was in, my own son threatening me, demanding I sign away everything I had built, everything I had survived for. He wanted to take it all from me while I was still alive. Before I tell you what happened next, Before I reveal whether I fought back, whether I caved, whether he hurt me or whether I escaped, I want you to pause for a second and comment below, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have confronted him? Pleaded with him? Called the police on your own child? Tell me honestly. I need to know. Because what happened next changed everything. When I looked up at Daniel towering over me with that belt clenched in his hand, something inside me broke. Not like a twig snapping, but like a dam bursting after years of pressure. Silent cracks and ignored warnings. All the exhaustion, all the fear, all the heartbreak that had been building for years finally surged through me. My hands were trembling, yet at the same time, they felt oddly steady, like my body finally understood something my mind hadn't accepted. This moment wasn't sudden. It was the inevitable end of a road I had allowed him to walk for far too long. He stood above me breathing hard, almost like an animal, pacing slightly, his jaw tight. He barked out again, "SGNDI?" and he slapped the belt down on the table, the crack slicing through the air like lightning. It jolted something in me, not fear but clarity. I pushed myself up slowly, using the edge of the sofa for support. I didn't say anything at first, because my voice felt like it was trapped behind a wall of shock. When I finally managed to speak, it came out barely above a whisper. "Daniel, what are you doing?" But he didn't answer me. He didn't even blink. He just pointed at the documents again and demanded that I move faster. He said he didn't have time for my emotional delays. Emotional delays. That phrase hit me harder than the belt ever could. It told me everything. He didn't see me as a parent anymore. He didn't even see me as a person. I was an obstacle, just like he had said. A hurdle to jump over. A door to kick down. A wall to tear apart. I felt my legs shaking, but I forced myself to stand straighter. "I'm not signing anything," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. His head snapped toward me, slowly, like a predator. Those eyes, those greedy, hungry, almost unfamiliar eyes, locked onto mine, and that's when he stepped toward me. I backed away, instinctively lifting my hands. "Daniel, please stop. Listen to yourself?" "Oh no," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Why you listen? You listen for once in your life. You've kept everything for yourself. You've wasted your life hoarding scraps and acting like you're some hero for working. This house should be mine. The land of it should be mine. All of it should be mine. You owe me. Owe him. Owe him." I never felt such a violent mix of love and anger in the same heartbeat. I kept backing up until my back hit the wall. He stood inches from me, breathing like he had run a marathon. I thought he was going to hit me. I truly did. My entire body froze. And then, something happened that neither of us expected. My phone buzzed, loudly. The vibration echoed on the wooden table and startled him. It startled me too. He glanced at it. The screen lit up. It was my lawyer calling me back about the land. And something flipped in Daniel's mind when he saw that name. It was like watching a match fall onto gasoline. He snatched my phone, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it. Glass shattered instantly. "You think you can sell the land behind my back?" he screamed. "You think you can make decisions without me?" That was the exact moment I realized something crucial, something that would change everything that followed. Daniel wasn't just greedy. He was terrified. Terrified that I might actually move on, that I might take control, that I might stop giving him access to my life. Greed and fear together turned him into something monstrous. He reached for the belt again. I swear to you, in that moment, time slowed down. I saw his arm move, I saw the tension in his muscles, I saw the fury in his expression. And something inside me snapped right back at him. I grabbed the lamp from the side table, yanked it up with a force I didn't know I still had, and shouted, "Stop." He froze. His arm hung mid-air. The belt dangled. We stared at each other, mother and son, but also attacker and defender. "If you come near me again, Daniel, I will call the police." He blinked. And then he laughed. A laugh that chilled me. He took a step closer. "Go ahead. Tell them what? That your own son scared you?" "Yes," I said. "Exactly that." His face faltered for the first time. A crack in the monster. A flicker of uncertainty. I repeated myself, louder this time. "I'll call them." He scoffed but didn't move. I edged toward the door, lamp still raised. Every step felt like walking through a dream, or a nightmare. My fingers reached the doorknob. I pulled it open. And I ran. I ran to the neighbor's house, clutching my trembling hands, shaking so violently I thought I'd collapse. They took one look at me and immediately ushered me in. I was barely able to speak as I called the police. I wasn't thinking about the consequences anymore, just survival. Just getting someone there before things escalated beyond repair. The police arrived fast. Faster than I expected. I watched from the window of my neighbor's living room as they approached my house, knocked, then entered. Daniel didn't resist. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He just sat on the couch, staring blankly, as if something inside him had already snapped long before that moment. And everything now was simply the fallout. They escorted him out. One officer gently asked if I wanted to press charges, and that question hit me harder than anything else. Press charges. Against my son, my baby, my only child, my entire world, my biggest mistake, my biggest love, my biggest heartbreak. I couldn't speak. I shook my head slowly. The officer nodded with understanding. They still filed a report, but they didn't drag him to jail that night. They warned him sternly and made him leave the house temporarily. When the officers left, and Daniel was gone, I stood alone in the quiet of my living room, staring at the broken lamp, the shattered phone, the scattered papers, and the belt on the floor. And that silence was the loudest sound I had ever heard. That night, I cried until my eyes felt raw. Not because I feared him, not because of what he had done, but because of what I had allowed. I had raised a boy who believed he deserved everything simply because I existed. I had softened every blow, protected him from consequences, shielded him from reality. And this was the result. The next morning, Daniel called me. I didn't answer. He texted me. Long paragraphs. Apologies mixed with excuses. Pleas mixed with manipulation. I was drunk. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You provoked me. Just sign the land over and things will calm down. He was still pushing for it even in his apology. I didn't respond. Days passed. Then a week. He sent messages saying he had nowhere to go. He said he was hungry. He said I was heartless. He said I abandoned him. I almost caved. Twice. But then one night, he sent me a voice message. He was crying. Or pretending to. He said, "You know I can't survive without you. You know I need what you have. You know you owe me a future." Owe him again. That same poison. That same entitlement. And that's when the clarity struck me harder than ever. I didn't owe him anything. Not my home. Not my land, not my savings. Not my peace. I owed myself freedom from the cycle that had nearly destroyed me. The following week, I changed the locks. I filed for a restraining order. Not to hurt him, but to protect us both from another escalation. And then, the hardest thing of all, I cut off contact completely. The silence that followed felt like grief. It was grief. I mourned the son I once had. I mourned the life I thought we'd share. But for the first time in years, I breathed without fear, without weight, without looking over my shoulder waiting for another explosion. Months passed slowly, painfully, but steadily I rebuilt my life. Therapy helped, friends helped, time helped. I sold the land. I invested the money. I created a retirement plan. I took control of my life, maybe for the first time ever. Daniel tried contacting me through relatives. He tried guilt. He tried tears. He tried anger. I stayed firm. Because love without boundaries becomes poison. A year after the incident, I heard through family that he finally got a job, far away from me. That he was living with roommates. That he was struggling but surviving. And maybe that's what he needed all along, a chance to fall on his own, without me catching him every time. The last time I saw him, purely by accident, was at a grocery store. We made eye contact from across the aisle. For a moment, neither of us moved. He didn't look angry. He didn't look entitled. He looked older. Humbled, human. He nodded slightly. A small, fragile acknowledgement. I nodded back, and then we both turned away. I don't know what the future holds for us. Maybe one day he'll come back into my life with sincerity. Maybe he won't. Maybe the distance will heal what closeness destroyed. Maybe some wounds stay open forever. But one thing is certain, I will never again let guilt, fear, or love blind me into surrendering my life to someone else's demands, even my own son's. And if you've followed this story to the end, let me leave you with this thought. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to feed their worst traits. Sometimes the bravest form of love is letting go. If you were on my side through all of this, please like this video. If you want more stories like this, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Honestly, what would you have done in my place? Thank you for listening. I'll see you all in the next story.